This is Antonio Moore from Tone Talks. I want to have a discussion about Hurricane Ida. Give my prayers, I should say, out to those victims, those people caught in the path of that storm. I want to talk today, give you guys a chance to call in. I know the power was out, and it's going to be out for a million people for some time down in Louisiana, but maybe you have family there, and you can call in and give us your take on everything so we can get an inside story on this thing. This is a sad day. We think back 16 years ago to the day, to Katrina, and we just say that, the prayers go to the fact that the levees held. A few of them topped over, but that's not the same as them failing. Generally speaking, they held, and as a result, this became a wind event rather than a flooding event. We only have one or a few deaths reported so far, but as Biden said, we're expecting many more. Hopefully, it's not you or your family that lost a loved one down there in Louisiana to Ida. But I want to get into the discussion today. I want to say something to look at the comments. We got people in the chat. We got people all across this country giving our prayers to the victims there. I know I got Patrice. Hopefully, you're doing all right, Patrice Lang Jordan. I know that the Gulf of Mississippi caught some of the back end of the storm. I hope you and your family are doing well. Prayers go out to everyone out there. I made a post yesterday. If you haven't heard the song Amazing Grace from Aretha Franklin when she was much younger, powerful. Prayers to all of Louisiana. May you see sunshine tomorrow after the storm subsides. #ADOS. And I truly mean that. As we go through these next few days, my prayers go out. Hopefully other people here are sending their prayers down there and reaching out to family that they may have in Louisiana. I have family in Mississippi in the back end of the storm. The winds aren't too bad there. I'm glad. But if you have family closer to this eye of the storm, please stay in contact. Make sure that they are all right. I know that the power was out across the whole city. What they said on CNN is this will be one of the strongest hurricanes to hit anywhere in Louisiana since the 1850s. That's the Governor Edwards there. That was the gravity of what we were dealing with. As a result of great work down there with the levees compared to what we had during Katrina, we saw more of a wind event than a storm event, or I should say flooding event, which causes so much more havoc, I believe, on infrastructure and also on people's lives, as we saw so many people drown and have to be boated out of their homes. I know the power has been out. Hopefully you guys are okay. This is Tone Talks. Please subscribe, share this video. We're going to have a great discussion. Looking forward to seeing who calls in, giving their testimonial on this event. Even if you went through Hurricane Katrina and you were down there, I want to hear from you as well. And just tell us the gravity of the impact that, these kind of storms have on your life or had on your life. I'm looking forward to hearing other people's opinions. I'm out of Los Angeles, so I don't have firsthand experience with a hurricane of this type. But from my view, it looks like it could be traumatic, quite traumatic. I know Hurricane Katrina displaced a million people, probably, if not more. Had people moving from Louisiana to Texas or to Georgia overnight. It looks like this storm, as a result of the levees not breaking, even though a few topped over, won't have that devastating impact. But nonetheless, some of those structures that got pushed over or the roofs came off, it looked like a sad event. I saw one young lady, and she went to try to see her grandparents late, and she drove her wheel right off her car because she hit a down power line. It's a sad day. We got people in the chat here. Please subscribe, share this video. We got ADOS all across this country, particularly in Louisiana and Mississippi, that we need to be reaching out to today. You can subscribe, press the bell, share. You got to press the notification bell, and you have to subscribe to get notices. Do both. Please also support this channel at tonetalks.org. Also support ADOS Foundation as we try to spread support for ADOS people all across this country. 310-388-3499. 310-388-3499 is the call in Looking forward to hearing from you. But as we get into this, I'm looking at Ida, and they were tracking it. It went quickly from a 1 to 2, and it hit as a 4. It hit as one of the strongest storms ever to hit Louisiana as a 4, and it moved slow. So it was and then the power went out. So it was a hard night for so many down in Louisiana. Many people have said they never had seen winds of that type, and these are people who went through Katrina in some cases. It was a devastating storm in size. If you look at it, it's reaching all the way out to the tips of Georgia, and you see it in Mississippi, but Louisiana caught the brunt of this. Ida closes in on Louisiana. And as I look at this thing, I'm looking at Ida closing in on Louisiana, and Ida lurks off the coast of southeastern Louisiana late Saturday, forecast to intensify into a devastating Category 4 hurricane with 140 more miles per hour winds, packing massive storm surges and up to 20 inches of rain. After it makes landfall Sunday night, the National Hurricane Center issued a warning Saturday that preparedness to protect life and property should be rushed into completion today. And this comes out a few days ahead of the storm itself. Ida is expected to be an extremely dangerous major hurricane when it reaches the coast of Louisiana. Hurricane force winds are expected Sunday, and portions of the hurricane warning area along the Louisiana coast. Storm surges could reach 15 feet along the Louisiana-Mississippi coastline. We saw parts of the coastline that were not underwater that in a matter of a few hours were fully submerged. We saw the reality of the importance of government and infrastructure with the levees and the difference between what we saw with Katrina and what we saw with Ida. One of the things that we also saw, but the whole city of I believe it was all of Orleans Parish, I want to say it right, including the city of New Orleans, lost power. 1 million people lost power. And they're saying it's going to be weeks before power comes back. We are in the middle of COVID. I was getting into that in a second. Hospitals lost power. We're in the middle of people going back to school. Schools lost power. The gravity of how this storm impacts an area that already was struggling it's a tragedy. And I just, as I look at it, I can't do nothing but send prayers and try to follow it and then use my channel to uplift a message of the importance of it all. But I also just wanted to give a place of solace where Black folks could get together and talk about like what they've seen. Again, the whole city, all of Orleans Parish was blacked out. Hurricane Ida shut down more than 95% of the oil production in the Gulf of Mexico. So expect gas prices to go up in the coming days because, again, 95% of the oil production in the Gulf of Mexico was affected by Ida. And, Ida closed in on Louisiana, and it was a devastating impact to the city. And I think for so many of us that don't live in the path of these hurricanes, we don't understand how overnight so much of this can cause such impact. Let's take the first caller tonight. Caller, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, this is Amira, Princess Vic.
Tell me what you got going on. You got family down there, or what have you heard coming out of the hurricane path?
Actually, my family is in Mississippi. I have family in Louisiana, but I'm actually an insurance adjuster, so I'm looking to get deployed down in that area to help folks out with their insurance claims. There are some areas that it's just massive catastrophe, and the number of claims that are going to come out. I mean, last year in Lake Charles, they are still resolving claims from hurricanes last year. So there were people who hadn't had their property fixed from the last set of hurricanes that are now, again, once needing to adjusting. So I was talking to an adjuster today. He said, usually when you go down to adjust, you have to stay about 2 hours away from the affected area because one, you have all the first responders there in hotels. You have all the people who have evacuated. You need certain like electricity, cell phone towers, Wi-Fi, all of that is just wiped out in the area. So, consider food. There's no restaurant. The Red Cross is there giving food and water to people because it is total and massive devastation. I can't even imagine like LaFosse, which was hit with high winds, but then I think they got like a foot of rain. The Forte is where like the storm came in. It's massive. I mean, the amount of damage actually in terms of the size of this may be more than Katrina. So I think this is something for us to watch because I'm sure there are going to be numbers of people who need to be evacuated. Now, my neighbors down the street, they have been here since they got evacuated from Katrina. So they've never gone back. So I think what we're dealing with is a situation where there are people that are never going to be able to go back home. So,
and let me ask you this, if it's okay for you to share. Have you talked to your family down there in Louisiana? Are they in the path? Are they doing okay?
Yeah, my family is in Lake Charles, so that's Southwest Louisiana. So they weren't in the path, no rain, any of that. But, the whole entire region is going to be impacted, like you alluded to, in terms of getting gas, getting supplies, electricity. When the grid goes down, the grid goes down. So although you may not have experienced like high winds or rain, you still may not have electricity for some time until they can get kind of the system back up and running. So, yeah, I'm thinking, I don't know if we'll get an impact in Atlanta. They're saying 1 to 2 inches, but we've had so much rain, it's a possibility that, we could have some flash flooding in the area as well. So, this is a large system that is going to have large impacts, not only in the Gulf, but up and down the country.
Yeah, man, I just wanted to come bring this show. This is going to be the show for the week. I think I needed to bring it on Monday instead of Thursday. Thank you so much for calling in, and also thanks for moderating.
Thanks for all you do, Sean. Take care.
Shout out. Great call to start tonight. Please call in, even if you're not in Louisiana, to give your take on everything. Let's be respectful. And again, we're just having an educated discussion about Ida closing in on Louisiana, passing through there, now becoming, I believe, a tropical storm. Started off as a 4. For a lot of us that have no experience with hurricanes or tornadoes for that matter, separately, we don't understand the devastating impact of not being able to know you, like being out of control in that way. In California we have earthquakes, but they're very random and very short. The ominous feeling of a gray sky and the wind howling and being in, and then imagine the power going out. And I think you have to connect with people on that level to understand the gravity of being in a whole city where the power is out. That means that the young lady whose wheel came off going to see her grandparents, she couldn't see when she drove. And they don't know how long it's going to be as this water, even though it didn't flood to the same level as Katrina, seeps into their homes as they can't go get food. That's why preparedness is so important. I think a lot of people will say, well, why didn't they evacuate? And they really don't have a context to, first of all, particularly as to Black Americans in Louisiana, the wealth level. I mean, they don't have the means to evacuate. But even beyond that, like by the time the highway is full, and I think that we really are told to like kind of fed this narrative and feed it to ourselves of this personal responsibility when sometimes it's just an act of God. And I kind of want to just frame that because I don't want us blaming those people that are suffering as if they did it irresponsibly, because it definitely was more to hear than that. Ida closes in on Louisiana. Let me read a little bit more. Ida is expected to be extremely dangerous major hurricane when it reaches the coast of Louisiana. Hurricane force winds are expected Sunday in portions of the hurricane warning area along the Louisiana coast, including metropolitan New Orleans. Storm surge could reach 15 feet. We talked about that earlier. The dangerous storm surge will be exacerbated by extreme rainfall. Much of Louisiana and Mississippi could get 6 inches of rain. So often we think about the flooding. So often we think about the wind. Rightfully so, it's a hurricane. But we forget that there is rainfall and there are lightning hitting everywhere. We forget the impact of having that amount of rain on a local infrastructure that already is dealing with the flooding. So there's nowhere for that water to go but inside of your home. There's nowhere for that water to go but to sit on top of your lawn. Much of Louisiana and Mississippi could get 6 inches of rain, while part of southeast Louisiana and the Mississippi could get 10 to 20 inches of rain. And they're talking about the 24-hour period. I don't know if people know what 10 inches of rain, what 24 inches of rain looks like in a 24-hour period, but it looks like an insane amount of rain. Flash flooding is also possible throughout the early next week. New Orleans Mayor Latoya Contra warned in a press conference Saturday, if you're going to leave, you need to do that now or shelter in place. She told locals to brace for damaging wind, heavy rains, and tornadoes, saying, I'm told that the storm in no way will be weakening. One of the things I also have talked to you about that you need in your possession, among others, is this right here. What this is a multiple service device powered by winding it. Now, essentially, I believe you can also put batteries in it, but it's also powered by winding. And what that gives you is a flashlight. It also gives you what's all too important, and so often we forget the simple things, a radio. So you're not sitting in the house basically with no access point to get information in Louisiana about who they're coming to save, how to get to rescue areas, what are the best routes. You need these. And you need these even if you're not in the path of a hurricane. You need these in your possession. They're not high cost, $20 at best. Order it today on Amazon. And I'm not trying to sell a particular brand, but I'm just saying this has multiple functions here. And, you know, I say that because we had the mayor there saying these things, and I just hope that the locals got a chance to hear these things. Please support this channel. Share this video. Again, my Cash App is Tone Talks and my Patreon is Tone Talks. Let's share this video. Let's get a powerful discussion. 310-388-3499 to call in and talk about this hurricane. Colin Arnold, the city's emergency preparedness director, urged people to be ready to shelter in place by midnight tonight if they intend to stay and ride out the storm. And that extended power loss is almost certain. And that's the other thing that people get lost on. There is a pivot point where you move from your choice to leave when now you have to deal with, you got shelter in place. And I think for so many people, they get, especially if the power go out, you get antsy and you decide you're going to run too late. The hurricane here now. The hurricane is here. Ain't no more outside. We're not calling for a mandatory evacuation because the time simply is not on our side. Cantrell, the mayor, said, we do not want people to be on the road and therefore in greater danger because of the lack of time. All departing and arriving flights were canceled at New Orleans Airport on Sunday. You know, there was this picture where they showed all the airplanes, and the airplanes were around New Orleans. And that picture captured so much of the tragedy of this event. Ahead of Hurricane Ida's anticipated landfall, Alabama Governor Kay Ivey issued a state of emergency for the state. Coastal and western continues on Saturday to 2 p.m. We still expect the possibility of flooding and the spin-off tornadoes in portions of Alabama. Okay. So as we look at this hurricane, we start to deal with the impact of a lack of stability. We start dealing with an impact of a lack of wealth and the inability to move your family from the pathway of a hurricane due to a lack of wealth. The inability to have preparedness items due to a lack of wealth. The inability to have generators that come on when the power don't come on. And for me, you know, I'm looking at this discussion And I see for a lot of us, we just want to do grief porn instead of dealing with the reality of preparedness so we don't have no grief. And I'm not saying necessarily that I'm chastising people for not having the needs, especially if they don't have the means to get those things. But I'm saying that this is the moment to reevaluate everything and look at your insurance on your home. Look at where your home is placed and whether you have the sandbags you need. Look at the tragedy of this moment to get involved with local infrastructure in your city that does the levees to figure out how they work. And what happens, where the spin-off water goes and all those things. You know, I have another article here because I have a few I want to share with you. This is the pathway when we look at this hurricane, Ida. You saw by Sunday. And the thing about these meteorologists, and shout out to him, and you know Byron owns the Weather Channel. So he had the Weather Channel, had those reporters out there. But when you look at this meteorologist, they have it down to a science, the direction of these things. I mean, they don't know which way these things are going to wobble. That's what they call it, one way or another, and it changes the mapping. But it's so much better than it's ever been in terms of telling you the direction and the date and time. So by Sunday, they knew it was going to be here. By Sunday evening, they knew it was going to be there. They knew the wind speed, that it was going to become a tropical storm. So if you're in this path where this red is, you need to start preparing yourself. You can't just say, well, it's in New Orleans and I'm in Nashville. Well, there's a tropical storm coming to Nashville. What are you doing to prepare yourself in Nashville? Looking way over here in Raleigh. I'm just saying this to you because I'm looking at this discussion, and I think for a lot of people, the gravity of this whole moment isn't being digested. You have updates on Ida's death tolls. You know, as I saw it, there was one death reported last night, but they couldn't get into, especially with the power out, they couldn't get in to see, and the flooding and the wind and the hurricane moving so slow. How many? There's going to be many more deaths than one. There was a live update today. I heard Biden spoke on it and said expect more deaths. Death toll expected to go up considerably. Louisiana governor said Ida is barreling through Louisiana after making landfall in the state as a powerful Category 4 hurricane on Sunday afternoon. It was one of the strongest hurricanes on record by both wind speed and pressure to roar ashore in Louisiana. Ida, now a tropical storm, is hitting on the 16th anniversary to the day. It was not around 16 years. It was the 16th anniversary to the day of Katrina. Let's take the next caller. Caller, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Shanette. I'm calling from Boston, Massachusetts.
Okay.
I watch your show recently.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to thank you for doing such enlightening this. This is just so terrible, and all I just want to do is send my prayers.
Oh, thank you for sending your prayers. Thank you for sending your prayers. Anything you want to say to the audience, or is that just what you wanted to say?
I just want to thank you, Tone Fox, for opening my eyes to a lot of realness among us Black people, not African Americans, Black Americans. I appreciate you and Yvette, and I just want to send my prayers and thank you and Yvette for opening my eyes for ADOS. Thank you.
No, thank you. Please stay tuned in because we're going to keep this show going. It's not going to be a long show, but we're going to get into a lot of topics. Again, 310-388-3499 if you want to call in. So continuing with this article, Ida, now a tropical storm, is hitting on the 16th anniversary of Katrina, a Category 3 hurricane that ravaged the Gulf Coast. Hurricane Katrina unleashed a series of events, taking the lives of more than 1,800 people and leaving more than $100 billion worth of damage in its wake. Power could be out for weeks in the hardest hit areas, energy company says. Power could be out for weeks in the areas hardest hit by Ida, Entergy said. I believe that's their energy company. Sharing some pics of Ida. This is a tweet out of Nola Reddy. Damage around town. This is an extremely hazardous situation, and we encourage everyone to stay off the roads. 911 service remains out at this time. See, that's an interesting thing, because 911 is out, and they're saying don't go on the roads. And I totally say follow their instruction. But it becomes difficult if you have somebody, let's say they even has caught COVID and is having breathing issues. I mean, you can imagine how much easier the virus possibly moves inside of these kind of conditions, you know, in terms of a hurricane and cold and dampness and everything else. But let's say that somebody needs saving. Let's say there's so many factors and you can't leave and there is no power. Hopefully, you know, it's getting to the 6 o'clock, 6:20 hour there in Louisiana, I believe. And hopefully people have gotten whatever they need done because the power is going to be out. And I suspect this is going to be a long night, not as long as yesterday, but a very long night nonetheless. How will Hurricane Ida compare to Hurricane Katrina as storm makes landfall on anniversary? We had Al Roker and NBC. We're going to talk about Al Roker in a second, going down there and taking that video by the waves. And I just didn't understand it. Maybe somebody else might have another opinion. If they call in, I'll give you mine. But before we get into that, I want to compare Ida to Katrina, according to NBC. Exactly 16 years after Hurricane Katrina slammed New Orleans, leaving more than 1,800 people dead and becoming one of the costliest storms in American history, another major storm on Sunday was bringing punishing winds and heavy rain to southeast Louisiana, Hurricane Ida. We got the chat going. Please join the chat here on YouTube. We have people all across this country joining in and giving their prayers, and some people speaking about what they went through, you know. And I think this is a great place to actually find support if you are going through things. The Goddess Love said it's 5 Central. They're in Central Time, so it's 5. So yeah, the sun is going down. Hopefully, they're getting everything they want fixed together for the long night they have ahead of them there. Reading more about this article, Hurricane Ida, which made landfall near Port Fortune, Louisiana, as a Category 4 hurricane. This is one of the strongest hurricanes to ever make landfall. It still was a 4, and the reason why, as I understand, is there's a lot of brown water where it's like water under the grass and things like that. So it allowed it to still keep that energy of being a 4. And it's really interesting because I think for those people that aren't down there like myself, think about being in an attic or a basement and it's 80 degrees. It's not cold. It's like 80 degrees and it's like humid. It's not comfortable. Hurricane Ida, which made landfall near Port Fortune, Louisiana, as a Category 4 hurricane with maximum sustained winds of about 150 miles per hour, has drawn comparisons to its deadly predecessor, with both making landfall in the same part of Louisiana. Experts said it is the strongest test yet for the system in place since Katrina. It's definitely an odd thing. It's definitely an odd thing to be watching this hurricane on the 16-year anniversary of Hurricane Katrina's landfall at virtually the same place, said Brian McNulty, a senior research associate with the University of Miami who studies hurricanes. But there are, and let me actually make this bigger so that you can see. But there are key differences in the two storms, and officials have sought to allay fears that Ida would be a sequel to Katrina by pointing to improvements made to the levee system following the 2005 storm to be better prepared in southeast Louisiana and the New Orleans metro area for the storm surge. Hurricane Katrina changed the city forever, but we are much better protected than we were during Katrina, and we saw that the few levees that actually they say were flooding got through them, it topped over. It didn't go through. That's a lot more water if it broke and then all the water pours in, then it being topped over, you only get the water that comes over the top. So for whatever you think about it, it seems like their infrastructure actually held. We got people all in the chat here. Please join the chat. Also call in 310-388-3499. Loving this discussion. Hurricane Katrina changed the city forever. We may have some local street flooding and we will have widespread power outages. We've already started experiencing that, she said. We are much better protected from storm surge than we were 16 years ago. Ida, which reached land as a Category 4 storm, compared with Katrina's Category 3. See, Katrina was a 3. Ida came on as a 4. I mean, a lot more people could have died if that levee system had not been brought up to level as it has been since 2005. is compared with Katrina, Category 3, is expected to produce a less severe storm surge. Hurricane Katrina was a huge storm with a very expansive wind field compared to an average storm, McNulty said. It also produced a record storm surge of about 24 to 28 feet along the Mississippi coast. Current estimates put Ida's storm surge at about 12 to 16 feet. That's a substantial difference. Twice the storm surge with Katrina. Hurricane Ida strengthened rapidly in the hours before it made landfall, whereas Katrina did the opposite, strengthened to a Category 5 over the Gulf of Mexico before weakening to a Category 3 storm when it made landfall in 2005, McNulty said. Hurricane Katrina was not as intense when it made landfall, but it was significantly larger and had more energy associated with it. As NBC News senior meteorologist Karen Puckowell put it, that's why we always say don't focus on the category, because you can get those far-reaching and deadly impacts despite it being a 3 versus a 5, for example. So you see this difference between Katrina and Ida, and I kind of wanted to frame those differences. You know, Katrina was a bigger storm and had much more surge, making it much more dangerous. In addition, the levees were just not prepared as they are now. I saw this video, and I had this to say. This is, Al Roker he went out there as like a reporter on the storm, and then he stood like in the water, and he let big waves kind of hit him. And it felt to me like grief porn. And for those people that work in the industry, too many of y'all have not been honest. You guys are, oh, great job, Al Roker. This is not a great job. I'm not saying it was just him either. It was people on a whole bunch of channels doing a lot of like tragedy porn, standing in the middle of tragedy instead of reporting on it. So Al Roker goes and stands near the waves and then lets them splash on him, and then tries to report so he can have this moment if everything goes wrong that he was in the middle of it. And it's like, you weren't in the middle of it. You flew down there and then walked into the waves. That's just my view. I love to hear if somebody has a different view. I don't have no problem with having a spirited conversation. But my view is that for this 67-year-old man to fly down into Louisiana during a storm and to go stand in the waves and have the video start running, that's just inappropriate. That's not reporting. That's making yourself the news. This is nonsense. Why did Roker stand in the wave path and tell them run the camera? This isn't how to report on the hurricane. It's using the hurricane as a prop, as a prop. You can show the havoc downtown or the wind levels by home, just not this by the waves. And there's people in the chat that seem to agree. It was a lot. It was like, what are you doing, bro? And everybody can have their feelings about it. And I thought that it was just like a whole bunch when people are already going through enough. If you want to report on the levees, you didn't really need to get in the middle of the storm so you can have a moment to try to win the Emmy. The other thing we can't forget is that all of this happens with a backdrop of COVID-19 laying ravage to Louisiana, just like Alabama and Texas, and people dealing with that while a hurricane comes in and devastates already faltering infrastructure of hospitalization and medical support and vaccinations. I'm waiting for Hurricane Ida with COVID-19. I was planning to evacuate, but with a positive test, I had to quarantine. So you can't even evacuate because you got COVID-19, so you had to quarantine. Think about that. This is the level of things that we saw people dealing with there in Louisiana. I want to share a little bit of this article with you just to get some kind of context to it. When the doctor nonchalantly told me that my COVID-19 test had come back positive, I decided to quarantine myself at home to avoid exposing anyone else to the coronavirus. I realized I had little water or non-perishable foods on hand. That left me with just 2 days to prepare, and so I sent up the metaphorical bat signal. How do you stock up for a hurricane when you have COVID-19? First, pray your friends have good taste in snacks. In true New Orleans fashion, my friends, family, and neighbors delivered food, including pistachios and homemade shepherd's pie, water, and cat supplies, and they did their own hurricane shopping. They dropped off items that had to spare I've been overwhelmed but not surprised by the abundance of kindness. Hurricanes foster an unparalleled sense of community. I've also learned that sometimes when you ask for help, not everyone will say yes, and that's okay too. Ida, that blustery, ill-mannered guest, is due to arrive today, August 29th, the same date that Hurricane Katrina made landfall 16 years ago. I lived in Pennsylvania then. I remember my elementary school organizing a toy drive for displaced children in New Orleans. But there was one question a student asked that none of the adults can answer. Why didn't they just leave? And so you start getting this understanding of why people don't leave. This COVID-19 is very serious. I wanted to come to you today. Make sure you read this article because it's a powerful testimony from this young woman. And make sure that you send prayers to those people that are dealing with this out there because it's going to be ongoing. This is Tone Talks. Please go to tonetalks.org to subscribe or donate. Share this video. I'm looking forward to seeing the comments. Hopefully you learned something today. I'm not saying I'm an expert because I'm far from one, but I appreciate the couple callers we got. I know a lot of people are still grieving and dealing with the tragedy of this moment. Thank you.